Hello, welcome to Birken Forest Monastery's live stream. I'm Ajahn Sona, and today we have some opportunities for questions and answers, and you can submit them in the chat bar. And let's begin, Pia. Away we go.
Ajahn, our first question is from Jodica in Elmshorn, Germany. Dear Ajahn Sona, in other religions or spiritual movements, people do also meditate. I was wondering if some of those experiences, i.e. the experiences of the mystics, can be compared to the jhanas or other achievements in Buddhist practice.
Well, from some of the writings or accounts of some of the Catholic contemplatives, of course, Hindu yogis, perhaps some of the Taoist hermits, they seem to indicate some sort of special state of consciousness, which is not normal, a withdrawal from worldly sensory experience. There's Teresa of Avila, and she's a mystic, Catholic nun mystic, and she talks about her prayer-type practices, and where she withdraws into the inner world, she withdraws from the sensory world, like a tortoise draws its head and limbs into the shell, and that is a simile from the Buddha as well. In meditation, and especially in jhanic meditation, and so jhana is a form of withdrawal from the external senses. This is like deep meditation, very difficult to do, and indeed shutting down the wanderings of the mind as well. So you're not. There's no sights, sounds, smells, tastes, touches, and you're not remembering or imagining or thinking about something. You're focusing on a particular theme, and as it goes deeper, there's no actual discursive activity. There's no inner dialogue. There's no inner monologue. There's no inner words or chat by the mind. So this is unknown to most people. It's a supernormal attainment. It requires a lot of capacity to focus unremittingly into the inner world, and it's accompanied by an ecstasy, and this word ecstasy is to sort of be out of the sense world. It is very joyful or very serene, etc. So this kind of state is described by Teresa of Avila, and the Buddha also uses the withdrawal of the limbs and head of the tortoise into the shell as a similar simile. Now, I don't know whether it found its way into the literature of the West, and Teresa came across it and thought it described her experience, or whether she actually developed that simile herself. But it's known 500 BC, and she's much later. I don't know her exact dates. Anybody know Teresa of Avila's dates? 12th, 13th century, whatever it is. This contemplative practices in the Catholic Church seem to have fallen away.
16th.
So she's 16th century. She would have been just before a kind of a decline in the deeper practices in the contemplative Catholic monastic structures, and I think the new technology and new activity of the world depreciated the appreciation of purely contemplative practice. And that's kind of a loss in the world. So I think wherever you see that the religion or philosophy has no access, is not even aware of a deeper state of consciousness, of profound stillness consciousness, that they are subject to decline, and in fact, this subject to some substantial dysfunction as well, and that the heart of sanity and peace and the capacity of an individual to be truly content and accurately understand the nature of wisdom and compassion is based on that capacity to still the mind. And where you have no people who can do that are functioning as a religion or a philosophy, then they're likely to go off the tracks. They're likely to go off the rails, in fact. So where you see a kind of a sustained humane ethic, because in order to enter these states of peace and everything, one has to have an ethical basis, and that ethic basis has to be non-harm in your your thoughts, your speech. Behind that, there's the basis for the deeper samadhi states, the deeper serenity states. Where that's absent, then you'll also find that the deeper samadhi states are absent as well. And where you find a great emphasis on intellectual activity, intellectual and academic activity, as in some of the schools of philosophy, and some of the religious sort of academic theology and so forth, you'll also find a lack of ability to enter into deep states of stillness, where that is promoted as the highest activity. That is excessive discursive thought, even of very refined ideas, interrupts or disrupts the capacity to enter into deep states of stillness. So yes, I think that outside of Buddhism, it is possible to find people experiencing samadhi. It's difficult to know because you can't know truly their mind, but some of the descriptions indicate that there are people who can do that. However, for Buddhists, it's not merely jhana or this supernormal state of stillness and concentration. It's right jhana or right samadhi, and it's called right because it's at the service of wisdom, and so it's going to progress and flower in realizations and kind of an full liberation from the suffering delusions of life. And it's only when it's serving that, when jhana or samadhi is serving the progress towards true insight and liberation, then it's what we would call Buddhist right concentration. But when it's detached from that and not serving that, then it's merely concentration, which is very admirable and very supernormal kind of capacity, but it's not at the service of ultimate liberation. Okay, so that's a brief answer to that.
Next question is from the chat from Echnoderm. Dear Venerable, after keeping at the Dhamma for a bit more than a year, I have seen many fruits, but this also caused me to develop a bit of conceit towards those not familiar with the path. How can I practice towards reducing this spiritual conceit and develop unshakable humility?
Well, humility is hard to, it's kind of it's a form of realization, so there's nothing to boast about. Humility is the absence of the need to promote yourself. So you can't really consciously do that. I mean, you can consciously restrain like you can analyze your own speech and say, well, I won't speak in praise of myself anymore. But still, if you think, you might be thinking in terms of the praise of yourself. I'm certainly happy that a year's practice has developed something in you that has had good benefits. The fruits of your practice are good. And it's very common in early phases, first of all, to be a kind of a natural missionary as well. Make yourself a pain in the neck to everybody you want to talk about. Tell them your exciting news. It's interesting, you all tune in here to hear things, and you're sitting there very open to whatever I'm saying, perhaps, and it's surprisingly easy to get some good information and benefit from it. And then you think, I know, I'm going to tell Bill and Jane all about this because it's so good, the information's so good, and it makes me feel so much better, and I think they would really benefit from this. And then you're sitting down in the kitchen, Bill, this is blah, 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 blah. So, and then Bill's he's not receptive, he's sarcastic, he's dismissive. Oh, you and your crazy ideas and all. And you think, what the? It was so easy when the monk was saying it, Must have been the monk. No, it's not the monk. It's you. This is a trick. This whole thing is a trick. We're tricking you. This is clickbait. So we're tricking you. It seems easy for you to learn because you came here to learn. And Bill and Jane did not come. They came for a cup of coffee and cake, but they didn't come to learn. So this is the secret, is that, if somebody is coming towards you and inquiring and they ask you, then you can reply. But if you start teaching without invitation, then it's likely to backfire, etc. So, and it's true that, you can feel a little superior because you're starting to get some control over you will start to understand the basic issues of life which need to be addressed. So this is the main thing that the Buddha is teaching. Like, the main thing is there's suffering in life, and you can do a lot about it by understanding and changing attitudes and so forth. And it's such good advice, and you feel that it would be lovely to share it, but it's not so easy to share. By the way, the Buddha, as soon as the Buddha attained awakening, he thought, this might not be possible to communicate this to people. Maybe I'll just sit here in bliss and not teach. And then he was urged by a sort of a deity to spread the news. And so he seemed to be quite reluctant because he knew it would be difficult to communicate these things. And then he headed off. He thought, "No, who should I approach first?" And he was thinking about some comrades of his that were engaged in serious pursuit of the holy life, but they were misinformed. So he thought he'd go. That they were very energetic and enthusiastic, but they were just off the track a little bit, so he thought he'd go and share it with them. And on the way there, he encountered a person on the road, and this person was quite impressed with his visible appearance. He was glowing with the radiance of his enlightenment, and this person was like, "Who are you?" And the Buddha said, "Well, I am the Buddha, the awakened one." And then the guy said, "Oh," and then he left. So that guy missed the opportunity because he wasn't there to learn anything. So the Buddha failed to communicate the first person he met, And there were many other failures. The Buddha it's not like the Buddha always succeeded in enlightening people. many, many people were completely resistant or quite angry with them and argumentative with them. And he didn't go about asserting himself either. He waited for invitations to talk, So this is the tricky business of communication, and it's part of success in your own practice that makes you want to communicate it, but quite naturally, and also perhaps to feel a bit superior. And you might, in fact, be superior, because the ordinary person who has not contemplated, tried to meditate, hasn't had the information, is really adrift in many ways. They're psychologically quite often misdirected and condemned to a kind of a continuous dysfunction and suffering in their lives. And if you manage to have alleviated this in yourself, then you are, in fact, better off than them. But the zeal of the new convert, as they call it in Christianity, the zeal of the new convert. Oh my gosh. Yes. Anyway, let's go on.
Our next question is from the live chat from Terry in New York City. I don't feel that I experience peak positive emotional states. Getting excited, being extremely happy, or being overwhelmed with joyful emotion doesn't seem to be within my emotional range. Is this a problem? Sometimes you say, quote, ask for more, or, quote, are you having fun yet? I don't think that I am. Generally, life feels good, and I feel calm, accepting towards my existence. Could you please share if developing and encouraging this higher range is part of the Buddhist path, and if so, how to develop this?
It's really a matter of why people are having peak experiences, why they're jumping up and down and screaming on the Super Bowl day. So, you may not be all that excited about football games, and good on you, because really, come on. Why is the person having the peak experience? So, if they're having it for worldly reasons that are very shallow, then that's not what we're pointing to. But so stability, a certain amount of non-excitement in the face of the trivial pleasures of life is good. So that shows a certain amount of maturity and wisdom. But there are some people who are somewhat jaded to the world, sort of too mature to play the fun and games anymore, may not realize that there are powerful, beautiful emotions available in the spiritual practice, in the psychological practice of which are described in detail in the Buddhist teachings. And they're not to be avoided, or they're to be cultivated and developed. And joy is one of them, and a beautiful, deep serenity is another. And that's what I mean by asking for more in terms of this internal, much richer, more mature spiritual dimension than the outer excitements of games and moments of excitement and ice cream and roller coasters and that kind of stuff. That's shallow joy, and the mature person is not excited by those things, but they should pursue beautiful emotions, though, in the internal and spiritual journey towards a freedom from all distress, So that's a brief answer for that, yeah.
Next question is from Matt in San Francisco, California, United States. I was wondering if you could speak about the fifth aggregate. My current understanding is that consciousness arises and ceases every moment at one of the 6 sense doors. But sometimes I hear Dhamma talks in the Thai forest tradition that seem to indicate a consciousness outside of this, pointing to a type of higher awareness. Is this term just being used to refer to Nibbana, or have I misunderstood?
No, I think you should be mystified by that. The consciousness is always a stream of experience. It's never a thing that is unchanging. It would be absolutely illogical to think it was. That kind of talk about sort of a unchanging externalized observer or internalized observer is very similar to some of the kind of language that you find in some Hindu talk of that there is this conscious, unchanging type of consciousness, which is simply a witness to the change, and that's the true self. This fails. This is a failure, and quite often it's like a mirror reflects things but does not change. So you see all of these different things in a mirror. You see lights and images and so forth. So this idea of an unchanging consciousness, which is mirror-like, and all of the events of the mind are changing, but the mirror doesn't change. Wrong. The mirror does change, and that's why it reflects. So there is a consciousness which did not change would not be conscious. Think about it. Think deeply about it. Because this is a sleight of hand, this is a sleight of words, actually, a very inappropriate, wrong, and illogical image that if a mirror is placed in a bag and is not reflecting anything, it's not a mirror. There is no activity whatsoever. So consciousness that doesn't change is not conscious. And the nature of all conceivable consciousness is that it changes. Otherwise, it's equivalent to not existing. There is no existence. The nature of anything that is worthy of the word consciousness has to have some activity in it. And activity means it changes. So that whatever the language is in the Thai forest, some of the Thai forest tradition, it always has to be compared to the suttas, the teachings of the Buddha. And if you don't find these equivalents in the teachings of the Buddha, then you should set them aside as perhaps a way. It might be a way of speaking. I mean, I've been in it. That's where I'm from, is the Thai forest tradition, and etc. But I've heard all kinds of things by various teachers, and teachers, including me, use personalized language, their own experiences, their own ways of expressing things, but they always have to be checked against the core teachings of the Buddha to be whether they're in line with it or outside of it. And in this case, I don't find such language in the suttas as this unchanging type of consciousness is simply not there, you know. Yeah.
Next question is from the live chat from Clay in Denver, Colorado, United States. Ajahn Sona, how can one relate skillfully to others delighting in sense pleasures? Some people share about their delightful sensual experiences and seem to want or expect mudita, but I'm not sure that's the appropriate response, and often struggle to respond in a beneficial way. Do you have any advice?
Yeah, congratulations. That's kind of a stage of when you're deeply into your practice and you're being coached by the Buddha to be very critical of the shallowness of the sensory experiences. You you come to this thing where, well, how do you relate to people who that's their only source of happiness, and they talk about it and etc. So but if you go further, the Buddha does say, be happy when anybody else is even a moment of happiness. There's little enough happiness in life that you should be happy for them. May they enjoy their happiness. It's brief, but at least they had some joy in their life. It won't last. They may have forgotten that it won't last. This is the same with little children. You're happy when they're happy. They get their ice cream and they're just over the top, over the moon. And of course, they're going to drop it on the floor and be terribly upset. And you understand it's just ice cream, but you're enjoying that a human can be happy for a little bit. That's a beautiful thing. And the deeper truth behind it is that, unfortunately, it's not enough to have a life around, and it's going to pass. That deeper truth you should remain equanimous in. You should not be sad about that. You should not be sad that many humans only have very shallow moments of happiness. You should just rejoice with them in their whatever happiness they have, and be wisely equanimous to the fact that and the deeper truth is that whatever has a nature to arise, including ice cream, has a nature to disappear as well. So that's the attitude, and it allows you to be, it gives you another possibility for your own joy as well. Rejoice in the joy of others, even if it's rather unskillful joy. At least it's something. But it doesn't change the big truth of things, that these are shallow sensory experiences. They rise and pass away, and if you're terribly dependent on them, you're going to end up being very unhappy. But that unhappiness is another problem to be solved, and maybe you can contribute to when people's inability to enjoy the sensory experience goes. Maybe you will have some advice for them how to find more joy in their life outside of the sensory experience. Yeah.
Next question is from the live chat from Holly in San Jose, California, United States. I would like Ajahn Sona's guidance for dealing with physical and emotional trauma. A car hit me when I was walking, and I am out of the hospital with many injuries. He left the scene.
Yeah, that's a very shocking event. And the fact that the person just it was a hit and run, it also shows the human callousness, indifference, or fear. The person is in fear for what the results that may happen. Well, from a Buddhist point of view, you just say, well, okay, I had some karma. I had, who knows, from a past life kind of experience, in the possibility of many, many past lives, we've done some unskillful things, and the fruit comes up in a life sometimes. The negative things come up in this life, injuries and illnesses and loss and blame and, false imprisonment. There's all kinds of terrible things happen to people. But from a Buddhist point of view, we say, well, I burned off that negative karma. Thank goodness that one's done. But we don't want to make further negative karma. So you could say, now something bad happened to my body, so I have to make sure that nothing bad happens to my mind. So I have to, in fact, the worse it gets in terms of my body, the better it has to be for my mind. So I have to be joyful. I have to never mind the guy who ran away. He's going to have his karma is already his. He's already wrestling with his mind, and if he's not wrestling with it, if he's sociopathic, he's going to have big trouble in this life. You don't have to pursue justice. Justice just is. It happens. But you need to be particularly joyful and happy because you've been injured. Now, do you want to make your injury worse or do you want to make it better? You want to make it better. So you have to say, strangely enough, like the fact that I got hit by a car means I really need to up my own emotional level of well-being. I can't produce fear around this because that's another injury. Now I am traumatizing myself. I am inflicting damage on myself by having fear and sadness and fury at the injustice of it all. So I must not do that. I must instead bathe myself in good well-wishing and wish for the well-being of my body, the healing of my body, and listen to positive Dhamma talks on loving kindness and so forth. Because it's not that some people don't understand that to have goodwill towards everybody doesn't mean that that you approve of everybody's behavior. It means that you benefit by having goodwill, and you don't benefit by having ill will. You don't benefit by sadness, by sorrow, by fear. That is self-destructive, and that you benefit by good, kindly, friendly feelings towards yourself and others, whether they're skillful or not. And so that's why you have to really push for positive feelings in the midst of this, and that will cure your trauma as well. Like, you have to understand, the trauma part is my reaction to the event. So I need to reform my reaction. I have to act towards things instead of react towards things. And it strangely has to be very positive emotions, even though I just got hit by a car. It has to be positive. Yeah.
Next question is from Igor in Yucatan, Mexico. I am intending to start a meditation center in a non-Buddhist land. Can you please give me some advice? Also, how hard is it to get a monk to come and visit a Dhamma sprout of a community? What is the process to invite one, and what are the requirements?
Well, actually, I myself started a little place in Mexico some years back, which didn't continue, but I've been to Mexico a few times and taught in Mexico City and in Veracruz and other places. We have there's a Theravada monastery in Veracruz, and there's a monk there who's perfectly fluent in Spanish, etc. So maybe you could contact him. I forget his name, Damascena, is it? So he's quite senior and quite qualified. But there are some groups in Mexico City also that have invite Theravada monks. I would perhaps, if you want a monk to visit, they may be able to provide a monk or recommend a monk to you. And so the starting of a center is, this is not like starting a business, so you can't go out and borrow a whole bunch of money and, it's very uncertain. So it usually always starts on a shoestring and goodwill. So as it has for me, and you don't bury yourself in debts and so forth, which just cause stress. So you have to stay very humble to begin with. And if you manage to do this in the right way, people will recognize that it's a valuable thing. And then you have to do it in a qualified and practical way. And you can, of course, with media now, you can form a virtual Sangha as well, so that your group can meet in cyberspace because buildings are very expensive. Cameras are less expensive than buildings. So you can make good connections through sort of get a virtual group going and communicate that way, and then rent a space or borrow a space if you're desperate enough. And then if people find value in it, it will grow and develop. And if you can get import a monk, that would be very good, who, especially if, of course, they can speak Spanish. Now you're narrowing the field. But if they can't, then, in Mexico, there's a substantial portion of the population that can speak some English, and translation is quite easy. So I can't speak Spanish, but I had a Mexican monk who was a disciple of mine. And so when we went down there, he would fluently and easily translate anything that I had to say. So that is some advice for this. It's quite an interesting process, but much merit to you for even thinking about trying to do it. And don't overextend yourself or overburden yourself. Start lightly and simply, and it's mostly about human connection. And then as things become beneficial, people's interest grows, and more you can realize it in a physical way with a place as well.
Next question is from the live chat from No One Everyone in Iran. Dear Ajahn Sona, everything I bring to mind, I can distinguish it as made up of smaller components, impermanent, and thus imperfect and disappointing. I can see that associating with these impermanent phenomena brings about suffering, and knowing so helps me suffer less, if I am being mindful. Would you say this realization is some basic level of enlightenment?
Yeah, that's the idea. I mean, if you were in Turkey and Syria right now, you would see that things are, what appears to be solid is now in little pieces. And tens of thousands of people are trapped and dead because of this fact, which is, the day before that earthquake, those buildings looked solid. And if I'd been talking about how everything's impermanent and uncertain and everything, and you've been standing in front of this condo apartment that you've been living in for the last 25 years, you think, well, this place is solid. What's going to happen? And then the next day it's gone. A very solid, apparently giant concrete thing is now in little pieces of rubble. And so are their lives and everything around them. And this is like a finger snap. It takes a finger snap to the fundamental truth is revealed. Nothing's secure. It's just it's a heartbeat away. And so you really need to internalize that and make that real. Because it's easy enough to say, but we don't always internalize it, and our traumatized reactions to these things reveal that we didn't really understand the uncertainty and impermanence of things. But if we can react with equanimity towards these events, then we understand, oh yes, I have achieved some degree of understanding. Yeah.
Next question from the live chat is from Alex. You mentioned that the first thing taught in judo is how to fall without hurting oneself, as a metaphor for something we also must learn on the path. How is this done?
Well, that's, I think we have to practice, rehearse failure. So there are four polarities in life. There's success and there's failure. And then there's praise and there's blame. And there's good fortune and bad fortune, and then there's obscurity and fame. So we like fame, fortune, success, and praise. But that means that you're going to win all your judo fights. You know, you're gonna do the fancy hip toss. You know, but they're never going to toss you. They're going to smack you in the face. So you have to rehearse, like, how do I feel when I'm blamed? How do I feel when nobody knows me? I'm obscure. You know, I leave home, I go someplace, nobody knows me. I have nobody. I'm an unknown. How do I feel when I fail? When I fail my exam, when I fail at my job, I fail. How do I feel when I have no fame? So how do I feel in those situations? You have to rehearse this. Can I be equanimous? Can I land well when I'm thrown into failure, into blame, into obscurity, into bad fortune? So how can I do I land well? Do I shrug it off? Or am I shocked and defeated? No. Well, so you rehearse it in your mind, and you might even try a few deliberate failures. Maybe try looking for an opportunity to fail. Go try something you don't do well. Give a speech sometime where you're not prepared, and I mean, this is one of the great fears of people. Is one of the worst things is speaking in public. Terrifying for many people. So therefore, go up, stutter away, forget what you're saying, and see what the failure feels like. The shunning by your peers. So this is kind of a spiritual practice, is that practice falling in your mind and make the scenarios where you fall, but you're fine, you know, because you don't have to, you need to know how to roll and bounce. Yeah, that's how you do it.
Next question is from Chloe in Portland, Oregon, United States. Do you think that appreciation of nature is a form of, quote, unwise attention to the beautiful? I see this practice in the teaching of the late Thich Nhat Hanh as a kind of constant mindfulness practice. Is this a Mahayana Theravada doctrinal split, the idea of having to renounce the world versus practicing in one's daily life?
No, it's not a split. I think you might be mistaken in your assessment of the advocacy in the Theravada school. We fully encourage you to be practicing in daily life in every situation, as Thich Nhat Hanh would say as well. Certainly, Thich Nhat Hanh did not neglect meditation, and he taught meditation. But of course, the Buddha himself, of course, is instructing not only monastics but also lay people, and the lay people have to function in everyday life. Some of them had 17 children. And they're running a business or a farm. They're administering a kingdom sometimes. These people are royalty, aristocrats, business people, farmers, big, huge family, extended families, all kinds of obligations. And they're practicing seriously. And the Buddha is like totally encouraging them and saying, the Dhamma is for you as well. That it's easier. Like life is, with all of these demands and distractions, can be very difficult to find time and clarity to practice. It's distracting. But so he sets up a situation in the forest for the monks where they have it's more peaceful. But of course, don't you notice that his advice is, monks, go to the forest, stay in the forest, practice in the forest. So he's a big advocate of the benefits of nature, the forest. And there's an appreciation of the forest. You'll even see some of the arahants are living in solitude. There's some verses by Mahakashapa, one of the great disciples of the monks, a fully enlightened arahant. And he appreciates, he gets a little poem of where he lives. He lives in a cave in the forest, and he said the beautiful sound of the peacocks crying and the wind and the leaves and so forth. He's appreciative of nature and its benefits to the mind, and that it's outside of the hubbub of the human interactions. So nature appreciation is a big thing in Buddhism, both schools, and also practice in everyday life is extremely advocated in both schools as well. And Thich Nhat Hanh has some very good teaching structures for that as well. His form of Buddhism is actually Zen. It's Vietnamese Zen school. But he's I would say from the Theravada, he's very big on mindfulness, and so he is quite aware of the early suttas, and he is quite conducive to. I mean, he has some crossovers with the Theravada type of teaching. His monastic communities are quasi-monastic. But from our point of view, it's quasi-monastic communities. They don't have they're not following the original sort of Vinaya, the rules of conduct for monks and nuns. He has his own little structure. I think it's 14 bodhisattva precepts and so forth, which is fairly common in these Zen communities and Zen schools. It hasn't worked out in many of these Zen schools. It has not worked out. It's not. It has not. There have been scandals and so forth. But I think in his sangha is it seems to be quite high reputation and very little in the way of any kind of scandal or anything like this. He seems to be a high integrity person. So I hope that answers a few things for you. Yeah.
Next question is from the live chat from Karmatik in the Bay Area, United States. Ajahn, is the one who knows the same as the Atman to Hindus? I know anatta is no separate self, but doesn't the witness always remain unchanging, my sense of witnessing?
Yeah, so I almost answered this earlier, but I want to answer it again because it's a very important point, which is very easily confusing for people, especially if you're dipping into various traditions like Hindu traditions, Advaita Vedanta traditions, mixed in with a little Buddhism here and there, and then you mix the Mahayana and the Theravada and the non-dual and the this and the that, and you get nicely confused, So as I said, by the way, the Pia has translated it as the one who knows, and I think if you look in the chat bar, what Karnatic said was puru, which is in the Thai forest tradition, this puru, meaning person, one who knows, the one who knows. And it's very similar to this phrase starts to sound a lot like this Atman or Mahatman consciousness, this unchanging witness behind it all, which is common in some of the Hindu schools. But as I explained, this is explicitly rejected in a sense by the Buddha. This theory was around. What they're looking for is there an immortal, unchanging soul which survives this body that cycles in samsara, and how would it? So some naive ideas. It has to be indestructible. It has to be unchanging in order to survive the changing nature of life. Because obviously you die, and if something goes on, it must not die, etc. So there's these theories around at the time of the Buddha about the soul. And you can see this is also in Christianity. The church father, the philosopher, theologian, church fathers, St. Thomas and Aquinas and so forth, they have to wrestle with this idea, what is the soul? And what are the characteristics of the soul? And they come to the conclusion that it's an indestructible, eternal monad of some sort. This is a naive theory. The Buddha says, look for it. You won't find it. You won't see it. There is no evidence of this. All there is change. And consciousness particularly is the only reason why you're conscious is because it changes. Consciousness is not a thing, it's a process. And you are not the witness, there is witnessing. So consciousness is witnessing. It's not a thing that witnesses. It's not the witness. There is witnessing, that's all. Endless witnessing, but no witness. Think about it. It's a different realization about how reality works, including your sense of self. So it can easily, people are easily convinced that there's always the me, that the same old me that sees different things. But that's just not well thought through. There isn't the same old me that sees different things. It's never the same old me. It's a new thing that sees new things. And this thing is not a thing, it's a process. So, I've mentioned that twice now in this 1 hour because I think it's an incredibly important point which is easily misunderstood, and I don't care whether it's found in what tradition it's found in. It needs to be subject to criticism and scrutiny. Yes.
Next question is from the live chat from JCKM01's channel. The Greeks identified 8 types of love: agape, unconditional love; eros, romantic love; philia, affectionate love; storge, familial love; mania, obsessive love; ludus, playful love; pragma, enduring love; philautia, self-love. Did Buddha have an equivalent term for each of these? How did he guide monastics and layfolk about love? How about the LGBTQ monastics and layfolk?
Yes, all of those forms of love, but of course, the Greeks had a separate word for each one of these. They are not all love. So eros and agape are words, and eros is not agape, and agape is not eros. But if you use the word love across the whole spectrum of these, you say there's 8 love. They're not love. They're agape or eros or philia, etc. So the Buddha had various words for various attitudes towards the world. And the highest of these is metta. And this is primarily, it's often translated as loving kindness, but it's from the root word mitta, which means friend. To be a friend, friendly and what is the essence of friendship or friendliness? It is well-wishing for safety that may no harm come to you. So for oneself and for others, may no harm come to them. And it doesn't matter whether they deserve it or not. They may be your savage enemy, but you're not wishing for their harm. You damage yourself by wishing for the harm of others. As far as eros, like romantic or sexual love, sexual whatever, lust, it's a form of lust. And the Buddha does give advice about the basis for a relationship, like a marriage relationship. Why what is the reason why one should be in a committed relationship? Just for the sake of mutual affection is the best reason. You like each other. That's the reason. That's the reason for getting together as a couple. You like each other. Beautiful explanation. I mean, there's terrible things in history. History is, it's almost, you can only take a little bit of history at a time up to the 5th century BC. If you read a good graphic history book, it's hard to, you will have nightmares. What people did to each other and why they were in these relationships is just enough to curl your toes. The idea that somebody in the 5th century BC is, because you like each other. That's why you're together. Maybe if you don't like each other, maybe you shouldn't be together. What a fantastic idea. So yes, the Buddha talks about these various attitudes, we would say, and as far as the LGBTQ RSVUZPI, whatever it is. How many letters do you want? What is the right attitude for all of this? Metta, may you all be safe and well. And if you decide to get together, whether you're L or a B or a Q or a T or whatever they are, I hope you do it because you like each other. You have mutual affection. There is no other good reason for getting together. Don't get together if you don't have affection for each other. And if only one of you is affectionate and the other one isn't, maybe it's not a good situation. And if not, you got the kids. So that, this is civilization. This is like, the Buddha is so far advanced that we're not even remotely near catching up to him. Nobody is looked down upon or harshly treated. I mean, there's no, even his ideas about for people who are, terrible serial murderers and everything. There's no indication that they should be abused or executed or anything like this. They need to be gently removed from society, but not terribly treated or anything like this. And so all kinds of people are viewed by the Buddha, and he's aware of the entire spectrum of the possibilities of the human consciousness. By the way, he says, you see the difference in animals, the bodies, the fish and a horse and an eagle and a snake. Just the bounty is amazing. And a centipede, 1,000-legged centipede, and worms and the different various birds and all these animals, incredible variety of shapes in the animal body, right? He says, but in the human mind there is a greater diversity in the human mind than in all of the diversities of the animal bodies. The spectrum of diversity in the human consciousness is greater than all of the diversity, the vast diversity of the animal bodies. And every person is unique. There are no two identical people, not a single pair. Even identical twins are not identical. And this is fascinating. Not even conjoined identical twins, where not only are you sharing the same genes, you got half your body is shared, and your environment is shared as well. Every moment of your life has been the same moment in terms of the environment. So both nature and nurture are identical for conjoined twins, and yet they can have personality differences. So this is what the attitude we have. It's like, find your way to the divine attitude, to the divine attitude of loving kindness, of true friendliness, and a wish for the well-being of others. And know that all the other forms are inferior to that. So that is the end of our hour of Q&A for today.